Hi everyone, welcome to the second episode of my monthly reading wrap-up plus Journal With Me series. I read a total of 10 books in February, so I decided to divide this video into two parts so that it won't be too long. So, for today, I will be talking about the first 5 books that I read in February. The first book that I read in February was Leave the World Behind by Rumaan. This is a thriller following a family who went to a vacation at a remote part of Long Island. They decided to go to a vacation away from the city, and they booked a luxurious Airbnb and stayed there. The vacation was spectacular until they received a knock on the door one night. There was a couple standing at the doorstep. They claimed to be the owners of the Airbnb. They mentioned that something bad is happening, a national blackout. However, there is no way for the family to rectify this information as the internet and the phone services were down. This is a daunting story following this family who are confused as to what to believe and what is actually happening around them. The second book that I read was The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. So this is the second book in the Poppy War trilogy. The Poppy War trilogy is a grimdark adult fantasy trilogy. I won't talk about the plot of the second book since it might spoil the first one. Instead, I will tell you about the first book. Fang Runin, or Rin, is an orphan who lives in a rural village called Tikani. Her aunt, who took care of her, wanted her to marry a merchant when she was only 14 years old. Rin wanted to escape the arranged marriage by preparing herself for an empire-wide test called the Keju. She managed to get accepted to Sinagard, which is an elite military school that trained war generals. In Sinagard, Rin had to face the prejudices from her classmates due to her background. Rin soon discovered that she possessed a lethal, unearthly power and aptitude for the art of shamanism. Meanwhile, the Empire is facing threats from the Federation of Mugen. A third Poppy War might be coming. I just want to say that this trilogy is my favorite fantasy trilogy so far. It was dark, gripping, and tense. It didn't shy away from the realities of war and how war changed people. The world was very well developed. I read that it followed actual historical events such as the Second Sino-Japanese War, the rape of Nanking, and the Chinese Civil War. Since the book delves very deeply into these heavy topics, please do check the trigger warnings before picking up this book. What I cherish the most about this book are the characters. Each character was so unique and so interesting. It is very interesting to look at the dynamics between the characters as well. The third book that I read this month was Lord of the Flies by William Goldin. This book is published in 1954, and we follow a group of British boys who were stranded on an island after their plane crashed. The plane was meant for wartime evacuation. The only survivors of the crash were these boys who were in their middle childhood and pre-adolescence. In order to survive and potentially get help, they need to govern and manage themselves. In this book, we watch their attempt at ensuring order by dividing jobs and choosing a leader, among other things. This classic includes a lot of discussion and themes such as groupthink and morality. The fourth book that I read was The Night Swim by Megan Goldin. This is a psychological thriller following a rape trial at the small town of Minneapolis. Rachel, the main character, is the host of a true crime podcast. Season 1 and Season 2 of her podcast became a huge success. For Season 3, Rachel wanted to cover about the current rape trial at Minneapolis. The accused was the town's golden boy, a swimmer that had the potential to represent the country in the Olympics. He was accused of raping a high school student who is the granddaughter of the police chief. As Rachel went to the town to follow the case, she started receiving letters at unexpected places, like her car windshield. This was odd, since
Rachel is only recognized for her voice and not her face.
The letter came from a person who claimed that her sister died from murder and not suicide, as the authorities claimed.
This book contains trigger warning for rape and sexual assault, so do check the trigger warnings before you decide to pick this book up.
The fifth book that I read in February was the beloved Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. So this classic was published in 1813. We follow Elizabeth Bennet, who lives with her 4 sisters and parents in rural England. Mrs. Bennet aimed to have at least one of her daughters to marry well. This is because their estate, owned by Mr. Bennet, could only be inherited to a male heir. Hence, none of her daughters could inherit their estate. Mr. Bingley, a young and rich bachelor, arrived in their neighborhood. Mrs. Bennet urged Mr. Bennet to make an acquaintance with Mr. Bingley. Later, they went to the ball where the Bennets are introduced to Mr. Bingley, his sisters, and Mr. Darcy, his dearest friend.
So those are the first 5 books that I read in February. I will be uploading the remaining 5 books that I read this month in next week's videos. So do look forward to that. Let me know if you have read any of these and what your thoughts are on them. In the meantime, take care, stay safe, and see you next week. Bye bye.